Welcome to the Leaders of Lasting Impact podcast. My name is Matt Pohl, and I'm your host today. I'm pleased to be joined by Dara Kiernan, who is in not sunny, but rainy Ireland. But
Right.
Dara is a leadership development consultant. Uh, his company name is KPI Consulting. But we've asked him to join us today to speak to how we can help and better small and mid-sized enterprises. That's really our passion here at the Rewild Group. And Dara shares that passion. And we just wanted some insight from Ireland today. And so we're really glad that you were able to join us.
Yeah, I'm delighted to be here, Matt. Thank you very much for accommodating me and allowing me to come in and share my thoughts with you. It's always exciting to get an opportunity to be able to share experiences and share insights with people in certainly small to medium-sized businesses that are in areas and in that size of company are ones that sometimes struggle quite a lot. So it's always great to be able to try and give back something. I've learned so much over the years working with companies like this, and so it's always great to have an opportunity to speak and hopefully add some value.
Yeah, no, that's great. Maybe just to start off the conversation, you could share a little bit about your background, leading up to you becoming someone, an advisor who's working with small, mid-sized enterprises. What kind of was the road that you traveled to get there?
Yeah, of course. So I think, and as most advisors, you have to have some experience behind you to be able to be advising
Right.
business. And I've worked in large multinational companies. I've worked in startups. I've worked in very small businesses. And funnily, you learn so much more in the smaller businesses because you wear every hat.
Right.
It's not like you have a giant HR department or a large technical team that you just lean on for whatever help you need. You need to find the answers yourself.
Right.
So I started leading a technical an IT team back in the late 90s in Microsoft. You may have heard of them. We have them over here as well, of course.
Yeah.
I've moved through various different industries, managing teams. I've spent about 25 years managing teams through IT, through financial services, security, through various different sectors, from large companies to small, as I said. And the key thing is really is understanding the people's behaviors and understanding what makes not just customers and not just employees, but stakeholders of all levels in the company, understanding their mindsets, understanding how they work, and what their I suppose what's their priorities,
Mhm.
and understand, and then trying to teach myself and learn throughout the years how to influence those various different stakeholders to ensure that people work together, people go in the same direction. So I've spent about 25 years predominantly in financial services. I spent
Okay.
probably about 15 of those years in financial services. Um, Mainly dealing with customer service teams and collections teams. I did a significant amount of work just after the financial crisis, 2008 to about 12, 13, fine tuning collections activities and ensuring that obviously banks and financial institutions were recovering quite a significant amount of debt, as we're all very much aware of. Um,
Right.
and there are quite a number of stories about that, but it wasn't particularly. I like to do things slightly different, and look at businesses in a different way, rather than the top down. I try to look at the customer experience and try and change how businesses do things to ensure that the customers, for example, back in those days, the customer had a choice of who to repay debts to. So we just
Right.
got to make sure that they're doing it with us first.
Right.
And it's the way we treat people, not just in customer interactions, but in every interaction. It's about how
Right.
you treat people that put you to the very top of their list. at a part-time level, and for probably fun, in the last 20 odd years, I've been involved in the Irish stand-up comedy scene as well.
Okay.
And yeah, and that's been great fun. I recently retired from it, and just because I've run out of time. But that area of things, from writing jokes and writing material, has helped me look at things differently. It's made me know and appreciate that I do look at things slightly differently. It's
Right.
given me great self-awareness, which for a leader is so crucial. Standing on a stage with a few hundred people looking at you, you find out fairly quickly whether you're hitting the right note or not. Where when you're a leader
Oh,
with teams of people who work for you, you don't generally find out how a message lands, because they just sit there and they just take it, you know. But
yeah.
but stand-up comedy allows you, and it also helped me to understand audiences and how to hone my communication. So that, although it seems like a very in stark contrast to managing financial services, it certainly added to my own skill sets. And yeah, so, and it's been fun, a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Well, they say laughter is the best medicine. So maybe you can add levity in any situation better than others, I would suspect.
I think so, and I think it does, and I think it adds to the morale and motivation of people. But it has to be done delicately as well, and it
Right.
can't be. I know the UK version of The Office. The guy is called David Brent. I can't remember what Steve
Uh,
Carell's character name.
yeah,
It
Michael Scott is the
Michael Scott.
the
That's it.
manager in the US one. Yeah,
Yeah,
classic.
can't quite be Michael Scott, but you got to pull it back a little bit. Yeah, but it does. It certainly adds to it, and
Sure.
in certain scenarios and in certain crises as such, sometimes the use of humor validates a team's confidence in you. The fact that you are able in these situations to revert to humor, to be able to use this in communication,
Right.
provides them with confidence that, hey, look, this guy's in charge. This guy has got us, and that has been very helpful. I've made some blunders, and as we all have, and I've learned from them. Sometimes comedy is not the right direction to go, but we
That,
learn. We learn.
yeah, that's interesting. So after this several decades in the corporate environment, um, what was the trigger that had you go from that kind of bigger organization to go out on your own to be an advisor and start to maybe have a passion for smaller businesses?
Yeah, I my last full-time role was for about 8 years. And I during that time and toward the very end of that time, I went back to college and I got my master's in finance. And when I was doing that, it in some way opened my eyes. In that 8 years of being in that company, I suppose I was somewhat blinkered, and very much concentrated on the internal processes and internal procedures within that one entity. And
Right.
when I went out to do my master's, which took about 2 years, I got to meet a lot of other people in various different walks of life and different industries, and I started listening to what people were saying. And I started to learn there was a lot more out there than just and I think at that stage I thought to myself, there are so many lessons over the years there's so many mistakes I've made. There's so many ways that so many great things I've done, which I'm so proud of. I've received, wow, 13 individual industry awards over the years.
Oh,
I've been very proud of it, but I've also made mistakes, but I've learned from them. And I've heard stories from people about various different experiences in companies, and I thought, if I could just help a few, if I could just do
mhm.
something, to just, the impact a bad manager has on a person is significant. I've
Right.
had some myself. I've I've turned a few. I've lost a few that just couldn't be turned, but I've also had some really good ones.
Right.
And the impact, and it's an immediate direct supervisor that has that impact. It's not somebody working on the front line is not concerned about the mood of the CEO of the business. It's their direct line manager. That person has the that's the person they go back to their family and complain about. That's the
Mhm.
person that brings them down and upsets them. And if that person doesn't have the correct guidance and help and advice and somebody to lean on, that continues. And then it has a knock-on impact throughout the business. So I just thought, it was a difficult move, to go from secure, regular paycheck, to going out on my own. But I just thought it was about the right time, and I'm not afraid of taking a risk. And I had myself I had a plan in place. I planned it for about a year and a half. I had a time where I had to say, "Hey, gotta go out and get another job if this doesn't work out." But
Right.
I gotta go knocking on doors in the meantime to see what happens. And luckily, and I won't say it was quite close, but then I got the first client, and after that, I've been quite lucky over the last probably 5 years now since I've been working for myself. So I've made and it's been purely from making relationships and providing confidence and comfort for people, and just being nice. You know,
Yeah.
we can't forget about just being nice.
Yeah.
You know,
What a concept, right?
yeah, hey, it's crazy in this day and age, isn't it?
Oh,
So yeah, I love what I do. I think what I've been doing for the last few years has been so satisfying personally because,
that's
you
great.
know, firstly, I'm responsible for my income now, but
Right.
I'm also not only imparting, I hope, some wisdom, but I'm also managing to learn so much from so many people. So it's yeah,
Right.
it's been great fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. When you went out on your own and even over the past 5 years, have you found that your background has resonated with certain kinds of businesses, whether that's a certain industry or maybe it's a certain profile of the leader or something like that? Where do you resonate the most in the market?
Yeah, I think so. What seems to constantly come back to me is contact centers. I get approached by companies and they're looking for changes in procedures or in strategy or in new technology or areas like this where they believe the problems are. Um,
Right.
and the majority of the issues resonate further to the boardroom table than the staff of
Technology.
the
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah.
And generally, a lot of my first conversations, before we agree to embark on a project, I always ask the question. I always ask the question if the cause of the problems that you're experiencing is a little bit closer to home than you hope for, are you comfortable with hearing that? And are you comfortable to make changes? Because I believe that and in my experience, it's always been the way.
Yeah.
And what would happen is if that person gets surprised, or they may feel that they've been ambushed, they may feel that I'm just not doing my job the way I'm being engaged to do so, and I think that just immediately breaks down our relationship, and I think it's a hard question for a director or a CEO to answer on the first day. But if they're not willing to change, if they're not willing to accept that type of feedback,
Right.
I need their support if we're going to succeed. So we have to work together. So I do find that contact centers are these places where nobody dreams about working in a contact center in school. They usually go in there for as a stopgap, perhaps, to earn some cash. Um, the ones that are have big dreams move on
Mhm.
after a period of time. The others become managers, and
Okay.
and that kind of seems to be what happens. And it's it's a there's quite a revolving door in contact centers because things move so fast, people leave so quickly, the attrition's so high, um, and they don't get time to support their management. They don't get time to, and they send them on people management courses. And although there is value in those courses, they're very generic. Um,
Right.
but we're all different, you know,
Right.
and you can't have a generic course and squeeze all of these different people into it and expect that this gives them the value that they need. And what I do find is with a few of my clients now and a few smaller companies that I work with, I help their junior leaders and the people who they've just brought put into those positions. They have great faith in them, but I help them with their expectations. I help them with what you know with the mindset that they need because every time you move into leadership or move up a rung on the ladder, there's a different mindset, and your own
Yeah.
mind changes with that. But people have to tell you that, and it's difficult sometimes for a direct report to have those conversations. So I have very open and honest conversations. I don't have HR listening in the calls with me. It's just me providing very clear and concise feedback, helping them on their journey, and trying to help them avoid make the mistakes that I made. And it's very satisfying. It's great to see these guys, moving up and moving on, but also treating their staff well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Realizing that that's what you've got to do. And I think the point I keep saying to people, once you become a manager, you've got to realize you now work for the team. That's now your job. You've got to work for their success. And
Yeah.
if you don't, if you think you're the big boss person now, and they all report to you and they'll just do what they're told, what you tell them, they won't. An analogy I use all the time. My wife constantly over here. Obviously, we watch soccer quite a lot.
Okay.
Now I'm a big American football fan, but we watch soccer. And there's quite a lot of drama about Manchester United right now, and all these terribly expensively paid footballers just not performing to the same standard that to the standard we would expect them to. And I
Right.
said to my wife, I said, you can't make it as simple as that. I mean, that's just money. And so if they're not getting treated well by their manager, and yes, the argument is, well, they should. They get paid a lot of money. They should do they should perform because they get paid a lot of money.
Right.
But the problem is their competitors are getting paid the very same money, but their manager is motivating them and their manager is supporting them and providing them with all of the outside money things they need as such. And so it's
Right.
not that they are performing worse. It's just that the others are performing better. And in a competitive market, that's quite crucial. If
Mhm.
your competitor is treating their staff better, that means your staff are treating your customers better, and it means your customers are hanging around for a bit longer.
Yeah.
That's really
That's a great way to connect that. It's that incremental value that the organization is bringing to their people that makes a incrementally larger value that's being delivered to the customer. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, the idea that the manager really serves the others is really something that, new managers struggle with, right? It's like, I got the promotion. I'm the boss. I get to tell everybody what to do now. And, obviously that's one approach that you can take, but I agree with you. It's much more effective if you can see that you now have to lead the team and your success is really dependent on their success.
absolutely. And a lot of the time you get that job because you are the best performer.
Right.
And a lot of times they don't look at your people management skills. They'll say you're the best performer. And if you think about you being the manager of that team and you still being the best performer on that team, while you're not doing the job, the actual task at hand, and all of your staff don't perform as good as you don't have a very good team. What you need to do is you need to, when you become that manager, the expectation is that you turn all of the people on that team into you,
Ooh, yeah.
into 20 or 30 you, you know,
Right.
because the key bit then for you to move on and for you to progress, the key to success as a manager is to be able to have is to basically work yourself out of a job. It's the same as a
Right.
consultant, you know.
Right.
So if I make sure that when I go on leave, my team perform just as well as they do when I'm there, it means when the question comes around the boardroom about, this next big role we have, who's going to get that role? Well, we can't take Matt away from his team because anytime Matt goes to the Bahamas for a week or two, the team just fall apart. So
Right.
we just can't spare him. So by doing that, you're sabotaging yourself. And so it is hard for people to understand that because they still want to be the star that they were when they got the job.
Right. Right.
But you have to. It's interesting. It's interesting seeing the penny drop when you're explaining how it works. And that I have to say I do it. Some don't get it, and some just won't.
Yeah.
Um, some people take management roles when they probably shouldn't have. And it's just not for them. It's the
Yeah.
extra money, and but and sometimes the advice I give to people is, hey, listen, hand back the management hat. Just, hey, it's not for you. You're not enjoying yourself. You've got to enjoy yourself,
Yeah.
you know. But I feel sorry for people who struggle in management, because I do think that a lot of it comes from themselves. They cause probably a lot of it themselves, because either they weren't ready, they didn't. Now the company may not have provided them with the support, but they also didn't ask for it.
Right.
They're not self-aware. And sometimes I remember a number of years ago we had a development plan for future team leaders, and they were being promoted from within the same company. And the important thing was, when you get promoted from within the same company, the first couple of weeks everybody's watching every single step you make. And they just think, what is Dara going to turn into next? Now he's got the power, now he's got the authority. What's he got? And I remember 7 of these guys getting on this course. And the one thing I said to them is, we're going to allow you to have direct supervision over 3 people each. And all I ask you to do for the next 2 weeks is do nothing. Continue your job. We're going to announce this, and we're going to announce that this will happen in a 2-week period. But I just want you to continue doing your job for the next 2 weeks. And because we didn't want people jumping off the deep end. But of course, 2 of them couldn't help themselves. And within 2 days, we had complaints, we had arguments, we had all sorts of things because the power got to them. And they're not bad people. They didn't just got ahead, they got ahead of themselves.
Right.
And and that would cause significant trouble to pull that back, because you can do a hundred great things as a leader. Wow, you do one bad one, and it's so hard to claw that back.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's but people are funny. People are funny.
I'm curious, did you get much of your comedic material through your consulting, or did you work any of that in, or was it pretty much outside of that?
No, very much outside of that. It was a real, Dr. Heckle, Mr. Hyde, or Heckle and Hyde type, or whichever way it's supposed to be, Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
Yeah, very different. Very different now, I must say. I never really spoke when I was doing comedy. I never really spoke about management and leadership. And I think probably a lot of it really was, I spent about 7 years on the stand-up stage at the beginning of my time. But then I wasn't to the standard that I would be to be that I would need to be a headliner. You
Oh,
know,
right.
and just being a 20-minute, 25-minute support guy just wasn't why I wanted to, just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And so I actually then moved into the management, and I managed quite a number of comedians, and I then
Okay.
set up a number of comedy clubs. So I was a promoter for a long time. And where I live in Wexford, I ran a club down here for the last 14 years, and I used to MC those nights. So
Yeah.
anytime we had it, so that gave me my fix, I
Your
suppose.
fix. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
good.
but we rarely talked about management.
Well, as you're consulting and advising these companies, where do you pull your methodology, your material from, right? Is it kind of exclusively from your past experiences, things you did well, things you made mistakes on? Have any other kind of thought leaders influenced you along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a great network of colleagues, and only recently I've expanded that network over into the US. I was asked to speak at a conference over in Florida back in October, and I met quite a lot of thought leaders in the CX space. And certainly for contact centers, that's so important. And I do a lot of research and speak to colleagues here about, a lot of scenarios that I come up with. It's not that I'll have the answer, but I know somebody who does.
Right.
And it may be, I'm 25 years in teams, and I still come upon scenarios with people and maybe kind of HR scenarios that even stump me.
Mm.
Um, but still there's the same fundamentals and you know, I had one scenario recently where which was a delicate issue between a man and a woman in a business, and I'll be delicate about what I said, but the core part about it was the management were got a little bit carried away with themselves and jumped because the dynamic was in a direction that it isn't normally. Um, Immediately the assumption came on that one gender did something wrong.
Right.
And the core part about it was within any crisis, and the core part for leadership is about remaining calm. And I remember being there and being the only calm person in the place. And it was slightly influenced by an incident that had happened a week before where where somebody had to be taken out of the building. And I think that still resonated with people. And I said, right, we got to do the same thing, get that person out of here, do this, do that, do the other, and say, hey, listen, we know one side of the story here. We need to calm down. We need to gather our thoughts. We need to find out all the information before making decisions. And
Right.
it took about an hour for people to just relax. And there was some shouting and there was some upset people and people feeling that we were letting down members of the team. And they had the feelings for the right reasons,
Right. Right.
but they were blinded by the excitement or the just
Passion. Yeah.
passion, and they just didn't allow themselves time to just cool it down, think about it objectively, and then look at all sides of this before you make a decision. So yeah, so a lot of the fundamentals, certainly when it comes to leader, when it comes to leadership, I think occasionally I need to make a call to somebody. I go, hey, listen, you got to tell me about experiences here. Have you come across something like this? Um,
Right.
a lot of it would come. A lot of that advice would mainly be on a technical side of things, perhaps, or perhaps in public sector scenarios, there are some sort of bureaucracy that you might not be familiar with.
Right.
Um, and public sector is pretty good, like with when it comes to bureaucracy. But yeah, generally, I find in the leadership, once the key bit for me is just about calming things. And once we calm things down, we can then think objectively about it. And then we can and then you may need to look at, a HR person. You may need to look at some policies or some statutes or something like that to give yourself a little bit of advice. There's so many ways these days to find that information. 20 years ago when I started, I certainly couldn't look it up on my phone.
Yeah.
So, you know, but yeah, I think as a consultant, as well as I don't know everything. I know I don't. But I kind of have a good idea where the information is. And the more people I listen to, the more thought leaders I listen to, and more kind of newsletters and documents I read, I keep that stored so that when the time comes, at the time comes, I know who to call, and in that time, the maintaining of the relationship with those people is so important as well, so that they'll actually pick up the call when I ring.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that's important too. So
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, it's great that you're having that kind of a lasting impact in those heated, challenging situations, because those can impact the people involved dramatically, the teams that are involved, and obviously the organization. So,
yeah, and I think emotion emotion is can be our enemy when it comes to leadership, and when emotions get involved, just poor decisions are made.
yeah,
And that can be so difficult for us as humans to be able to control our emotions. That's not how we're built. Everything we do in our businesses, everything we do is appealing to people's emotions. We want people to buy a product not because of the price of it, because they feel that they want that product or they feel that they need that service. But yet, as leaders, we're holding back that emotion, and we're trying. And I suppose, as I mentioned earlier, I look at things a little bit differently, and I kind of think, well, that's the one thing that can get you into trouble. If you look through case studies and into legal case studies, especially around HR areas and unfair dismissal and various different lawsuits, you'll always look at a company that didn't follow their own policies and procedures, didn't follow the structure that is being embedded into their business, and
yeah,
they follow their heart. And
okay.
that's generally what gets them into trouble.
That's very interesting. Yeah. If you were sitting across the table as we kind of wrap up here, and across the table with a business owner of a small, mid-sized business, what kind of general piece of advice or wisdom might you impart?
Yeah, I think certainly the most important one for me is remaining calm. That's just so important. And you will get challenged on that. I think as well, it's for certainly for smaller businesses. People get into a business because they have a certain skill set, and they maybe perhaps they own a printing company because they love printing, or they're a photographer or whatever their business is. That's their skill set.
Right.
It's okay not to know how to lead people. It's okay. That's not maybe your thing, you know? So it's okay not to know how to lead, but it's not okay not to ask for help, you
Okay.
know? So I work with a company, a small company, maybe less than 30 people. This guy, I love working for them. They're so good. And the owner is a real IT genius. He would love nothing better than to sit in a dark room all day just coding, but he's a victim of his own success. And he has people that he needs to manage, and he really just doesn't want to. And he's really good at it. I keep telling him, really good. People respect him. They really like him, and they hang around. But he just doesn't want to do it. But he said one thing, great to me. He says, "Look, I don't have to." He says, "This is what I've built. I know." He says, "I don't know that I'm good at it. I don't believe you when you say that I am. I don't want to be good at it, but I know that and I'm aware of that. And so that's
Right.
why I engage with you. And I ask you to come in and help my leaders and I help so that they'll help my staff. I'm
Right.
aware of it." So the key thing for him was he was so self-aware um of his own blind spots that he knew that he needed to ask for help. And I've been with them for 4 years now at this stage, and they'll involve me in many of their strategic decisions, a lot of different, certainly a lot of their leadership work and a lot of various other aspects. And it's funny, they just had a problem with their call center. That's how they called me at first, and now I help them with that, their sales team, all sorts of various different areas. But that's I think that's it for smaller businesses. You've got to wear all the hats. It doesn't mean that they all fit you. You know,
Oh,
you you
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know that's the
That's a
one
great.
thing that's tough for people.
Yeah, I like that saying. You have to wear a lot of hats, which is true, but they don't all fit you. And your point is, um, just be aware of that. Know that you have areas that are blind spots or weak areas, and you have to bring in whether they're members of the team or outside resources to help you. Otherwise, that blind spot turns into a major weakness in the organization, and that can cause dramatic, um, negative consequences, right?
Yeah, and as we said earlier on, I mean, I'm aware I don't know everything as well, so I'll ask for help. And when I don't know, and I'll say to my clients, "Hey, listen, I think you've got me here, but leave it with me, and I'll find out the answer. Or if there's a better skilled person in this area, I'll recommend somebody for them." But
Right,
what you mentioned there about it doesn't always have to be a consultant. You know,
right,
your staff, your team, they're there for you. They're rooting for you. What you do in your business is a massive factor in their livelihoods. You know, they want you to ask. So don't go and now, and I know I'm going to probably do myself out of business, but don't go spend lots of money on people like me. Speak to your team first and actively listen. Listen to what they have to say.
yeah,
Because most of the answers I find when I go into businesses, I get those from the team members. They tell me, and that's what I end up going back to the board of directors or back to the owner and saying, hey, this is what your staff are saying. And they say, no, that can't be what. No. I said, well, do you not believe? I mean, there was an old phrase. Um, if you believe, when you ask people what is their greatest asset and they say it's their staff, and then you ask them, how much time do you spend with your greatest asset? And you find it's very, very little time. Um, you
right.
know,
That's
it
clever.
just happens to be the case. So biggest advice for me is listen to your team. Provide ways for anonymous feedback to come to you if you feel that it makes them uncomfortable, but don't just leave it at that. Don't be comfortable that you have to provide it anonymously. They should feel comfortable that they can come to you directly and not be worried about any sort of consequence or any sort of. This should be it's your business, but you're all in it together.
Mm,
You've got different goals. You want to build a business. You want to, leave a lasting impact. You want to leave it to your kids, whatever it happens to be. But your staff, they want to do the same. They want to put food on the table. They have maybe different priorities, but they're all in it with you.
right.
So learn from them. Hire people better than you. That's the way to do it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think that's the big thing, and that's what I do find is that people don't listen to the knowledge that they have inside their own businesses, and for whatever reason it is, and maybe they feel it makes them look weak, but it doesn't, it doesn't. And if they think back to the times when they were in a business, when they were working for somebody else, if they
right.
think about how they would have felt if their boss came to them and asked their advice, they'd feel so special.
Yeah,
That's exactly what their staff are going to feel if you do that. So
yeah.
yeah, it works for everyone.
Okay. Well, Dara, we're kind of out of time here, but you've said some things that I'm sure will resonate with some of our audience members. And so I'd like to, if they wanted to get a hold of you, what's one or two ways for them to get and reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is kpiconsultingireland.com, and that's KPI as in key performance indicators, kpiconsultingireland.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn as well. So my profile is Dara dash Kiernan dash KPI dash consulting, or just pop it into the search DARA and KIERNAN. And I'd be delighted to talk to anybody wherever they are. Obviously, nowadays the world is so small. We can do these calls, we can do them on Zoom, they don't always have to be face to face.
Yeah, no, we've seen that as well in this arena. And no, that's great that you can help people across the globe now. As long as you can line up your time zones, that's still a bit of a challenge. But anyway, Dara, I appreciate your time today and for joining us. And I appreciate our audience listening in again. Thanks for joining this episode of Leaders of Lasting Impact. I I hope that you'll continue to join us as we have these conversations with business consultants, with the business advisors in particular, who have a passion for helping small and mid-sized businesses. It's such an important part of each country's economy, and I would argue an important part of the society that those businesses are in as well. So as Dara's pointed out, don't think you have to have all the answers. If you need some help, reach out, and hopefully the folks that we're having on this podcast can be a resource for you. Anyway,
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
yeah. Okay, Dara. Thanks again, folks, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye now.